Hey. Oh, hi. Good evening, everyone. I'm Aubrey Kay. Tonight we have Chasing the News, Stone Cold Sober, Still in Love, featuring couples Tim Ryan and Jennifer Jimenez and Mark Melkin and Fabian Quezada Melkin. I would like to introduce our moderator tonight, William C. Moyers. William is the Vice President of Public Affairs and Community Relations for the Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation. His memoir, Broken, My Story of Addiction and Redemption, was a New York Times bestseller when it was published in 2006. 15 years later, it still remains in print in paperback. I know because I read it a couple of years ago. He's the author of several other books, has appeared on Larry King Live, The Oprah Winfrey Show, and National Public Radio. Take it away, William.
Thank you, Abra. You have been tireless in your efforts to make this evening happen, and already your hard work and diligence have paid off again. We have over 180 people registered for this unique event. Welcome, everyone, to a candid conversation on sobriety and fidelity in the midst of the topsy-turvy times of this relentless pandemic. From my home office in St. Paul, Minnesota, I am your moderator for this evening. And just like our first webinar back in August, this means my chief responsibility is the timekeeper for tonight. And my primary challenge is to keep us moving so that we have time for the always important, always intriguing questions and answers on the back side of this webinar. You'll note that the chat feature on your Zoom panel down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that chat feature. If you have some questions, go ahead and type them and send them to Aubrey and me via the chat, and we'll pose them to our panelists in the second half of our program this evening. Before I introduce everyone, let me thank our sponsors. There are only two this evening. Real Recovery Film Festival Virtual Edition, coming to a computer or a personal handheld device near you on November the 6th through the 12th of 2020. And our second sponsor, the Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation, the nation's largest nonprofit provider of addiction treatment. And in the interest of full disclosure, it's where I have worked for the past 24 years and where I was a patient 31 years ago last month. I want to thank my colleagues, Jeremiah Gardner and Nick Motu, for agreeing to Hazelden Betty Ford's support of this important gathering this evening. This evening is brought to you by our sponsors, but it is the brainchild of one man, my friend and fellow traveler, Leonard Bushell, the editor and publisher of Addiction Recovery e-Bulletin. Leonard, before we get going here with our guests, I've got to ask you what a lot of people at Hazelden Betty Ford want to know, and it's this. How did you decide on this topic for this evening, maintaining sobriety and fidelity during a period of uncertainty? Leonard?
Okay. My name is Leonard Bushell, and thank you everyone for participating tonight. It's really special. The brainchild, well, I guess, and in full disclosure, I was also a patient at the Betty Ford Center in August of '94. Every day started out at 100 degrees and went up. But my using had finally taken me to hell. So I want to thank everybody there for keeping the air conditioner on. And why I thought of this was because, you know, when the COVID hit, being single, I thought it was relatively easy for me to row my own lifeboat through these uncharted waters to see how I could handle it. And being a soloist, it's not that hard dealing with quarantine. But then I started wondering how all the couples I knew, without any real meetings, with so many jobs either being lost or done from home, how people were grappling with these uncharted waters and whether they were getting closer or getting ready to kill each other. Because it seems like quite a challenge to have your basically whole life turned upside down like it has been for so many of us. And I'm at my home office in Studio, California. And in full disclosure, I'm also the founder and director of this virtual Real Recovery Film Festival, November 6th to November 12th this year. And it's not just on devices, it's streaming in other ways. So that's why I just thought, how do people, I wish I had the challenge myself, but I don't. But I'm wondering how people who live together and work together and don't work together have stayed, so, like I said, without real meetings.
Well, thank you, Leonard. Let's find out. We've got two couples taking on this big topic. Mark Malkin and Fabian Quesada Malkin coming to us from Los Angeles this evening. Welcome, Mark. Welcome, Fabian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also joining us from Beverly Hills, California, Jennifer Jimenez and Tim Ryan. Welcome, Jen. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also want to just, on a personal note, thank all four of you for your willingness to stand up and speak out in a public setting like this on a very intimate topic of sobriety and fidelity. It's not every day that people are willing to take on, you know, a topic like this. So for you all for doing this, thank you so much. And so let's just dive right in and find out. Mark and Fabian, the two of you met and you got married in sobriety. What impact has this pandemic had on your relationship? Mark?
I mean, I can't speak for Fabian, but I think it's made us, it's deepened our relationship. I think it's, you know, usually when there's no pandemic, I'm very busy, he's very busy. I work late at night and sometimes he's with me, sometimes he's not. And we've spent obviously more time together than we've spent in our, we've been together a total of 9 years. But I think it's really deepened it. It's, you know, we converse more, we talk more, we understand each other more, I think. And I get to wear his pants now because of COVID.
So Fabian, I mean, do you agree with that? It's brought you guys closer together in sobriety?
I do believe that it has gotten closest in sobriety because it just, like he was saying, he used to work a lot and we wouldn't spend a lot of time. And now I get to spend more time with him. And at first I was a little bit like, kind of like scared, I'm not gonna lie. Because I don't know like how much he can take of me more than it's not because of him, because I find him really easy to be. And I was more worried about me, but we've been really, like he said, it's gotten us more close and more, not that we're honest before, but we're getting to know each other a little more. And because we're in like a close space for such a long time, we get to see each other a lot and get to know even closer in a way that you really kind of don't have a choice to.
Yeah.
It's there, but it's been great because I love him and I truly, he's my rock, and I don't know that I wouldn't choose anyone else to be in quarantine with than Mark.
Thanks for sharing that, Fabian. Tim and Jen, you all are newlyweds. You got married last December, I believe. What's it like? What's it like being newlyweds in a pandemic?
So we fell madly in love, and it was like, you know, 5 months later we were engaged, and then he just kept saying, I want to be married to you, I want to be married to you. And I'm like, let's have a wedding. And he's like, let's just get married and then we'll have the wedding. And he's like, his daughter was here, she's 5 years old, she was here last year, and my mom was here, it was New Year's Eve. We had filled out paperwork at the Beverly Hills court, and they had no dates available till like the new year in February or so. And he's like, I don't want to wait any longer, and we get married. And everyone's like, you're newlyweds, and I'm like, COVID, you know, and lockdown, you know, and life has been really amazing. It's been scary. It's been explosive at times. I see therapists now a lot more. You know,
I have a therapy appointment tomorrow morning.
Yeah, he started doing therapy, and you know, I couldn't imagine doing this with anyone else. And you know, I'm at a place in my life, you know, I'm not 20, in my 40s, I decided 2 years ago, here I am alone, you know, I'd never been married, I don't have kids, and I said, you know, to the universe and God, I said, you know, I choose to live the second half of my life happy. And we always go back to that, you know, and Tim and I, well, we work together, we live together, we've been isolated together, we had COVID together, and, you know, we got through it together. And when I go into my, like, oh my God, you know, the world's coming to an end and we're never going to work or all this stuff, he's like, we're fine, babe. And I'm like, oh my God, I have a partner, you know, I finally have a partner. And, you know, it's been a blessing.
How about you, Tim? Do you share your wife's sentiments there about being newlyweds in a pandemic? It's okay?
Yeah, you know, the best thing about Jennifer coming into my life, the 6 years prior, I was going, and the last thing I was looking for was a relationship, and I wanted to partner up with her for business, to speak together, to do interventions, maybe have a docu-series, open a treatment program. And it's been this whirlwind, but as Fabian said, Jen is my rock. She is my best friend. I just turned 52 the other day, and in this second half of my life, I want to enjoy, and like Jen said, I mean, we are together 24/7. We work, we travel, we do interventions, we speak together. And then we were, you know, on this COVID lockdown, and our world shifted because we had 85 speaking events get canceled. Then we both got COVID, and it was 6 weeks of hell, but we did it together. And man, my life is blessed, truly blessed that we are able to do these things and stay sober and not kill each other.
So far, at least.
Yeah.
Can I say something? So I love when, you know, I don't love the fact that coronavirus and COVID exists, but everyone's like, it's baby boom year. And I looked at him, I'm like, it's like, hope we don't get divorced year. I mean, like, I really feel that. And I'm glad that we're all, four of us are all in a relationship and still happy.
Well, let's talk about that stress, though. I think you bring up a good point. I read a piece the other day that said, as a matter of fact, in some countries that are sort of on the backside of the pandemic, they are seeing a spike in separations and divorces. Mark and Fabian, I want to come to you and ask you, Mark, I'll start with you. Is this pandemic the most stressful influence that you have felt in your relationship with Fabian?
No. I can talk about it. Yeah. Fabian was undocumented when we met. I'm not going to cry. And he was undocumented, and I don't want to talk for him, but we fought the government for 5 years to get his green card. And there were many nights or days that I would fall to the floor thinking my husband was going to get deported. So, you know, what I keep saying to people with recovery and COVID, I'm like, COVID's nothing. Through overdoses, we got through green cards. COVID, oh, we have to stay home? Really? That's not going to kill me.
Yeah. Yeah. Fabian, what about you? Has this been the most stressful period in your relationship with Mark?
That's that is the one thing that is probably has not been stressful and during COVID, my relationship, because it's like I said, I feel like we have grown together and we talk together and we have grown as a couple, I believe. Anything else around it is the one that it has caused more stress and during COVID, like work stuff and other stuff than the relationship. But the relationship, I think, has gotten stronger for me.
That's inspiring to know that. Jen and Tim, what has this pandemic taught you about your own recovery? Jen, I'll start with you. What have you learned about yourself in recovery as a woman in this pandemic?
That my faith is really strong right now, and trusting that, you know, we're always going to be okay. We'll get through this. There is another side. I feel that it's taught me that I also need to dig a lot deeper, you know, a lot deeper. I have to, you know, tell on myself more. I remember the first week we had flown here because I put acting on hold for a little while. And I decided to tell Tim that I had been holding for a few years. I'd been in the trenches, you know, just speaking and stuff. And I said, you know, babe, I've been holding this for a few years. I really want to get into acting. Tim's like, act then, babe, you know, just like such a guy. And I was like, not ready. Let me tell the university when I'm ready. And so I did. A couple weeks later, and boom, I get a movie. Like, it's crazy how it happened. And then I get another one, and I get a pilot. And so we had flown back the first week of March or so, and I'm going to shoot a pilot. And all of a sudden, California shuts down, 2 days later. And I'm like, I guess acting's on hold. And a week into this, lockdown, I remember being in this room and running into the bedroom where Tim was. And I said, babe, oh my goodness. Like, my alcoholism is in high gear right now. Not that I want to drink or use, but I suffer from alcohol, the isms, right? And I go, and my mental health is at stake because I suffer from depression. And I go, oh my gosh, there's a pandemic within a pandemic about to happen. And he looked at me and he goes, we need to talk about that. And so I needed to be very clear and very thorough with myself and with my mentors, my sponsor, people around me, just constantly telling on myself, so it's having me dig deeper and really hold on to what I have right now and appreciate it, the moments.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jen. Tim, how about you? What has the pandemic taught you about your own recovery?
Well, to me, it's twisted, but I ended up getting sober in prison for my third DUI. I did 13 and a half months in prison, and I'm not eating in a box under my bed. I'm not having to put up a towel to use the toilet. So I'm pretty humble with it. I can walk outside. And even when Jennifer will get stressed about this, I'm like, we have food, we have a roof over our head, we have, clothes on our back. I can FaceTime our kids. Our parents are okay. Our brothers and sisters. It could be a lot worse. And there's a lot more people that have it a lot worse than us. So one of the reasons I got connected with a therapist was I needed someone else to talk to. I can call my sponsor. I can talk to people in recovery. I can talk to my wife. But the best decision I made at 51 years old, I'm now 52, was to be able to just have a therapist. And I'm telling you, this gentleman is a game changer for me. And I recommend everyone talk to a therapist because it's good to have that outside perspective. But I'm pretty grateful and humble. I'm here. I'm coming up on 8 years sober. My life doesn't suck. And look at my beautiful wife. It's not too shabby. I leveled up.
Amen. Fabian and Mark, what is it? What are the teachable moments for each of you as it relates to your own recovery? Fabian, I'll start with you. What's something that you've learned about yourself as a recovering man in these times?
What I have learned during this recovery is having self-esteem and loving myself and letting someone else love me, which is one big thing, because I wouldn't be in this relationship if it wasn't because I worked out on that, just on that part of myself. Because again, when I first got sober, I have zero self-esteem, and I didn't think I could be lovable. I didn't think anyone could love me, and why are you loving me, but you have to love me at the same time. So I think that's the main thing for me, getting the self-esteem and letting someone else in and love me and know that I'm lovable more than anything as well.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Fabian. Mark, what's something or a few things that you've learned about yourself as a man in recovery during this pandemic?
I've learned more and more how much I love being in recovery. I can't imagine being out there right now. And I know, we know people are out there, and I know if I was active in my addiction, I'd be out there. But the fact that I'm not, the fact that I'm not running around trying to figure out how to get, my next fix while wearing a face mask, it's just, and it's, and we know it. In addiction, we'd say, fuck the face masks, and we'd be off and running. It's just, it's taught me, and it's just made me, Fabian and I had this great gratitude moment. We were at a beach, and there was a bunch of gay boys at one part of the beach, and they were partying. I mean, they were just partying. And one guy was overdosing. And Fabian and I were like, that guy's overdosing. And Fabian's like, call 911. So I call 911. They get me through the lifeguard. And earlier in the day, Fabian said, do you want to move from here? And I said, no, I'm fine. I don't care. They're partying. Has nothing to do with me. So we call 911 and I tell them, I'm like, I don't want these guys to know that I'm the one who called because they're all on drugs. I don't know what they're going to do. I said, I'll try to flag you down without them seeing, of course there has to be drama involved. And the lifeguards come, take the guy away. His friends are continue partying. And I walked away from that and I said to Fabian, I'm like, I said we had to sit there for a reason to help this guy. And it was awful to watch, but to know that we had the clarity to say, let's call 911, because I think people who are normies may not have called 911. They're not going to know what an overdose looks like. They're seeing a guy like, oh, he's drunk, And we knew a few minutes longer, who knows what was going to happen. And it just was such a moment of gratitude. And I'm not saying it to pat ourselves on the back, like, look what we did.
Sure.
But it reminded us of where we were and where we could be any minute. And it just, more and more things like that happen during sobriety. It's just during COVID. And it's just, I'm reminded of how much I love waking up and breathing.
Amen. Yeah. I have a favorite saying in recovery that coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. How it is that we cross paths with people who need our help, or how it is that we meet each other or do those things that can't be explained, except that they can be explained by some power greater than ourselves. There you were to help that young man that day. I was thinking about people who are struggling during this time. And Jen, I know that you and Tim do a lot of work in the field of intervention and sober living and helping people. What is a message that you all would have for somebody who might be out there tonight listening or watching, who is struggling with substances, but saying in their own convoluted way, I can't go get help now because there's a pandemic? What would be the message, Jen, that you would have for somebody who's struggling?
Well, I would say anyone right now that's struggling, whether it be that they've had a really bad day, they're scared, they're in fear, they're angry, they're sad, they're hurt. Me too. I've been there. I understand it. And I really mean this from the bottom of my heart. I really encourage anyone who's struggling or who's newly sober to try to get to know the person they're trying to kill before they kill him or her, because they might realize that they matter and that they are so loved. And it's up to them how they want to tell their story, because their story is not done. And that we, Tim and I, and all of us really love you, and we expect nothing in return. I mean, knowing that I'm trudging with you guys is more than enough for me and for Tim. And give yourself a shot. I know it's a day-at-a-time program. I get it. And I'm one of those people. I just couldn't stay sober to save my life. And now I'm coming up in a few months on 15 years of sobriety. And it's just a lot of yesterdays put together. But for me, they kept telling me, kid, give it a year. The old timers, they're like, just give it a year. If your life doesn't get better this much after a year, then we'll gladly refund you your drink. I'd be like, my drink, what are you talking about? I want 8 ball. And I'm telling them all the time, like, don't forget that 8 ball you promised me. And they're like, just do the work. And I did the work, and I did the work, and I did the work. A year later, I'm in Argentina. My family's from Buenos Aires. It's their summer, our winter. It's January 15th, my sobriety day. I'm walking out of my grandmother's hospital. She was slowly dying. She didn't die that day, but I was walking out, and I was walking on the dirt roads, and there's some donkeys walking by in Buenos Aires, and all of a sudden, like, I'm start going, gosh, it's so hot, and I'm like, it's hot, and I'm like, it's hot, and I start screaming, like, it's hot, and they're probably like, this damn, like, American, what's she doing? And I realized at that moment that I felt heat. Like, I felt for the first time, and my life got that much better. And that is why I hang on to no matter what. So I encourage others to do the same thing, because life does eventually get better.
So Tim, what about the family that's out there tonight? They've got a loved one, a husband, a wife, a spouse, a significant other, a child. What do you, and I know you've done interventions and helped a lot of people in your advocacy work. What do you tell the family that's out there tonight wondering if this is the right time to get help for that loved one who is struggling? What do you say?
It's always the right time. If they have a heartbeat, they have hope, whether they've been kicked to the curb, they're homeless. The hardest thing for anyone to do is this: I need help. And there are resources available. I mean, we run a nonprofit. I field 50 to 100 phone calls a day. 90% of the people don't have any resources to get into treatment. They're out there. You just got to put your hand up. And if you're the parent or loved one or husband or wife, stop the enabling, you know, stop the codependency. If you baby them, you're going to bury them. I've been to 150 plus funerals, the first being my 20-year-old son that died on my 21-month sobriety date from an accidental overdose. And I went to a meeting that night and I never looked back. But quit waiting for tomorrow, because tomorrow may never come. It's whether it's alcoholism, the opiates today, it's all fentanyl. Cocaine's caught with fentanyl. Meth is caught with fentanyl. Stop the insanity and just put your hand up and ask for help. Reach out to us through social media, whatever, there's help out there. It's just a matter of putting that hand up and asking for it.
Thanks for sharing that. I know at Hazel and Betty Ford, we often talk about the fact that the only bottom with this illness is death, and anything short of that is a way out. That hope that you talk about there is critical. So thank you for sharing that. I want to talk to Mark and Fabian, and then Leonard, I'm going to come back to you in a minute on a question, so get ready. But first to Mark and Fabian, you know, when we were preparing for this webinar, you all shared with us, Mark, you shared the fact that you, at one point you had a recurrence of your use, of your illness. It had come back at some point. Do you think this is a particularly stressful time for people in recovery to maintain their sobriety? And what happens if they have had a recurrence of their use? What's your advice for them, Mark?
Just keep coming back. Just keep coming back. Like what Tim said, raise your hand. And it is the hardest thing, you know. For me, you know, I was a chronic relapser. I was the guy at every Monday night meeting crying because the weekend had just ended and I'd messed up again. And I had a therapist say to me, you need to stand up as a newcomer. Didn't want, you know, you do the thing. I'm like, I'm just going to get through 30 days. Then you know, and you just, every time they say stand if you're a newcomer, you're this. I'm like, you know, and you think everyone knows. And he said, you have to stand up and you have to take those newcomer chips. You have to own it. And I never understood that. I was like, I know what I have a problem. What do I got to own? And that's where I got on my road to recovery. And, you know, I did have a relapse in our relationship. We weren't married yet, and it lasted 24 hours, and it was the worst 24 hours I could ever do to a person. And I know that if I probably was with a normie, I don't know if the relationship would have lasted. I mean, I have no idea, but I know Fabian understood it, you know, and it definitely caused a strain in the relationship. Things like that will, you know, let's not sugarcoat it, but it's just keep coming back. I can't, like, I've become that person who says that when you're first in the program and you heard someone say, keep coming back. It's like, but it's torture to keep coming back. It's torture. But if you just keep coming back and, you know, wait for the miracle, God, I sound like that person.
Well, and it certainly beats the alternative, right? Which is not to come back. So you got to keep coming back. Fabian, what's your counsel? Let's say you're in a relationship. If say somebody's watching tonight or listening, and they're both a couple in recovery, and one might be struggling, and the other one is still, you know, holding on to their recovery. Fabian, what's your counsel to that person in the relationship who is sober when their partner or their significant other isn't in that moment?
The only thing I can say, and again, like Mark just said, he was only out for 24 hours. And I don't know how I will have handled myself if it would have been more than 24 hours. But what it helped me to stay and be compassionate about it is like, what if it was me on his shoes? Like, do I want him to leave me and just throw me away just because I make that relapse or that mistake? Or do I want to stay and figure this out? And again, just like he said, let's not sugarcoat it, because it took us work to move forward from it. So the advice I will give someone that is with someone that is using or drinking and the one that is not, I would just say, be compassionate until I guess you can't be compassionate anymore, because if he isn't, the person is in his disease, there's nothing you can do to save him. But always think of like being yourself in their shoes. And I think that's all I can say about that.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Fabian, for sharing that. We're halfway through already our webinar. We've got another 30 minutes to go, and we're going to start taking some Q&A. We've got a lot of questions coming in now. We'll come to that in a minute. But Leonard, I wanted to turn it back to you for just a moment. And I don't see Leonard on there. Is it safe to assume he's there? There he is. I see you, Leonard. I see a still photograph of you, but can you hear me okay?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, Leonard, let me ask you, when you hear these two couples talking about hanging in there together and going through recovery together and dealing with this pandemic together, what do you feel? I mean, what do you feel as somebody who you talked about sailing through uncharted waters, oftentimes by yourself or separately? Do you think it's harder? Do you think it's harder to stay the course in recovery when you're by yourself than it is when you're with a couple?
Well, not when you're in either of these couples. Sounds like it would be much easier. In fact, the other night, there was an earthquake in Los Angeles. During the day, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. And then I went to a party. And then that night, there was a fairly substantial 7-8 second earthquake. And going back to sleep, it happened at 11:30 at night. I thought, it would be really nice to be with someone else here to feel, to protect and feel protected by. So, I might be cavalier and flippant by saying, oh, it's easy to steer and row my own boat during these, uncharted waters. But it would be even nicer to have someone to row when I'm too tired, or to row for them when they're too tired, and to point out all the lovely plants and trees along the shores of this river of life. It's nice to share and say, oh, look, a piranha. Oh, no, look, a goldfish. Don't put your foot, don't go in the water. Oh, but it's back on. So, no, I'm thrilled to know these people and to hear these stories and to know that there's so many people, because I spoke to a few people this week who are having problems, who I told to tune in, and hopefully they will, and hopefully they can work things out. And I would assume that the pandemic is like a magnifying glass on issues, because you don't get to go to the movies on Friday night and eat popcorn and go home and whatever. You have to deal constantly. It's you have to decide what you want to watch together. That alone could be and I don't have to. I choose whatever I want. When I go to a museum, I look at the paintings I want, but with a certain sense of solitude. I don't call it. I'll call it solitude.
Yeah.
Which I'm trying to live with. But I miss meetings. I miss real meetings. I have my family at meetings, and I realized what AA is and what we will never get on Zoom. To me, my definition of AA is someone new coming in, being a little nervous, and spilling their coffee. And suddenly 5 other people jump up and get paper towels to help them wipe up their coffee and tell them, don't worry, it's not a big deal. It's just that. I haven't seen a cup of coffee spilled in a meeting in 6 months. I don't see that on the Zoom.
So let's go there, Leonard.
Compassion for the newcomer in a suitable way.
Thank you. Let's go there with our panelists tonight. Tim and Jen, I'm going to come to you first. I mean, we all keep waiting for normal to come back, and I suppose it will, but it's probably never going to be what it was, whatever it was. And in the meantime, we do plug in this way by this medium and other ways too. What is the verdict from your perspective, Tim and Jen, as it relates to these Zoom meetings or these meetings on other social platforms that don't require us to be in the same room together? Are they working, and are they the answer longer term?
Really quick, Leonard, about the earthquake the other night. It was Tim's first earthquake. We had just gotten in town and just got back home after being gone a month. And I'm in the kitchen, he's in the bedroom, and he's like, Jennifer, why are you shaking the bed? Like, I'm like,
the bed fast with me.
what? And I'm in the kitchen just shaking, going, what? No, it's not me. But I just needed to say that. And I think that, you know, I know what for me, what alcohol, what AA or any 12-step room has done for me and helped me through the years and still continues to help me is that communicative relationship, you know. And yes, Tim and I have that ability right now to be together, and I can like tell myself, but I'm sorry, he's a guy, I'm a girl, like we have different DNAs. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get my head the way that another woman would get my head. So Zoom meetings help, you know. I feel like, oh my God, I'm seeing familiar faces, or I'm able to talk with other people, but it's not the same. It's not the same whatsoever. On that level, I agree with you, Leonard. You know, seeing newcomers come in or seeing old timers say, hey kid, how's it going? You know, or just somebody just nodding at you, you know, and like, cause they get you, you know, we may not have the same stories, but we speak the same language. And I'm not one to be on the phone that much. And plus I'm always running around. Like I'm either driving, Tim's doing on the phone, or he's doing all the calls, this and that. I'm doing a million other things. So I don't have that, you know. I have my girlfriends in treatment, I mean, in recovery, that we FaceTime, and now we have to FaceTime, and I have to answer because I have no other excuse, you know. But otherwise, it's been difficult, you know. It's not easy. It's not easy. And will it ever be normal again? I don't know. But it is what it is right now, and at least I can tell myself with you guys.
Tim, is it working for you, Zoom?
You know, it's not the same, but I look at it that I always try to take a negative and turn it into a positive. You know, we were the Skirball event that Leonard was having Jennifer and I were presenting at that, and then in March, and that got canceled. But right now, I'm able to meet William, Fabian, and Mark. I have 3 new friends here because of COVID causing this to happen. I'm able to do meetings with people all over the world. But it's not the same. We were in Florida, we were able to do a meeting a few weeks ago or a month ago, whenever we're in Arizona, we could do one. But I know people that are meeting in their backyards and getting 6 or 8 guys together and putting some chairs up. So you got to think outside of the box. What hurts my heart is for the new person that's trying to go to a meeting, or they can't get a 30-day coin, or they can't get a year birthday cake. And they can't see someone spill coffee or just get a hug. I miss that. I miss coming up to my friends and just giving them a hug and saying, I love you. You know, it's great to see you. But we have to adapt with where we're at. This too shall pass. This is not going to blow away, but hopefully, you know, the governments will do what they need to do. But I don't think this will be around forever. We just have to adapt. And that's what we did in addiction. And that's what we have to do in recovery.
Thank you. Fabian, Mark, how's it working for you, this remote connection to recovery?
I mean, I have to admit, I haven't been doing as many meetings as one should. Zoom meetings, you know, you know, I do miss the in-person thing. I'm a personable person, but it's pretty amazing how quickly the recovery community pivoted. You know, it's like everyone went into survival mode, and it was like, here's a Zoom. At that point, I'm like, I don't even know what Zoom is. Directory. I remember asking someone, could you send me your Zoom directory for And, you know, a lot of people have asked me like, oh, it must be harder for a newcomer. And I'm like, and no doubt it has to be. But I keep saying, if a newcomer does get through this, it's a piece of cake afterwards.
Amen. Amen. Fabian, is it working for you?
Just like Mara, I've been doing, I haven't done as much as I should have, but the times I have done, it does work, but I still do miss that person to person. And it's just more like the energy vibe, like everybody, just like Jennifer said, speak the same language, and just being in that space, like the energy as a person is missing from, I feel like it was missing from a meeting. And do I, that's the only thing that I could say, but because the rest is like you listen and you hear the same feelings, and just looking at the person's face when they're speaking instead of looking at the computer. Again, this is like the best we can do, and it's great. Do I think that at some point we will go to some kind of normal? I just, like everybody spoke, I miss like giving hugs or smiling at someone, and just that camaraderie that comes with it at times to see your friends. And that's all I have to say about that.
Well, that's good. Thank you, Fabian. I agree. You know, Jen, you've been very public. I read a piece in Women's Health that you talked about not just your struggles with and then overcoming your substance use issues, but also the issues around food and issues around weight and physical well-being. Jen, do you think this is a particularly difficult time for women in recovery to maintain not just their sobriety, but also to be healthy?
I do. You know, I was taught in early recovery by a therapist that if, you know, for women, if you're, you know, you have to find out how you're eating, or if you're overeating, undereating, if you're cutting sexually, if you're acting out sexually, and your alcohol and drug addiction. And if you have those 4 things in check, you're good. So I always go back, I resort back to the beginning for me. So I'm always like, okay, are these things in check for me? Am I, you know, prior to getting married, like, am I, you know, doing the right thing? And now being married is like a new thing, you know. I don't want to get too comfortable and not, you know, I don't want to fall apart either. However, you know, I haven't worked out in so long, but I walk, you know, I'll start like at night, we'll binge watch things. So I'll, you know, lift the 5-pound thing, I have wristbands on, and I would be very cautious. Like, I went from anorexia to obesity, and I've had every eating disorder in between. So we need to manage something, right? Like, that's how us women think. So a lot of times, and I have these conversations with my girlfriends that have long-term recovery, like, you know, oh, I'm doing this diet because I need to take care of this, or I got, you know, I'm so fat now. Like, I don't want to fall apart either. I want to be in the best mental, body, spiritual place possible. And we got the COVID-15 as well as getting COVID.
Explain what that is.
And that means we gained 15 pounds. And at first, everyone, you know, because I had all these things that, again, I talk very openly about this, and I've written about it and stuff, is that, you know, we had the run, like, we had all the symptoms, right? And so people are like, girl, you must look bomb. And I'm like, I think I might be getting there. Then they put us on prednisone, and I'm like, for a month. So I exploded for me, you know, and I'm like, okay, I'm not 267 at my heaviest, but I could feel better about myself. So I started that journey again.
Thank you. Tim, what about men who need to be concerned about mind, body, and spirit, with the emphasis right here on body? What's your counsel?
You know, for me, it's more internal work. You know, if I put on 20 pounds, when I got sober, I weighed 158 pounds. Today, I'm 220. Yeah, I need to lose 15, 20 pounds, but I don't get too hung up on that. I actually did do push-ups this morning. But our lifestyle, traveling so much, and, you know, you can't even go to an airport restaurant and sit down. So we're having to eat out of the convenience store, a bag of peanuts, a bag of chips. I got 2 Snickers bars. So it comes with it. But yeah, it's very easy because people can get into depression very, very easy. And they start self-medicating if they're sober, with food, with sex, whatever. But yeah, you gotta keep all that in check. But one thing you have to do, you have to tell on yourself. And our other topic earlier, when we're talking about people struggling, and the best advice I ever heard was, don't take any advice from the last person you got high with. That's yourself. Again, ask for help and tell on yourself. It's as simple as that.
Can I say something really quick again?
Of course. Go
I'm
ahead.
all about, like, babe, let's just keep it sexy. Like, even though we're together in each other's face all day long, like let's try to keep it sexy, you know? Like, so you gotta kind of you know, work a little harder right now. You know?
So, all right. And then, in fact, that sort of is a nice segue into a question we have here. It says, as we know, many couples are separating and divorcing through this pandemic. What relationship tips would you suggest to couples struggling in this current landscape? So, Jen, you talked about being sexy. I'm going to come to you, Mark, and to you, Fabian. What is your good counsel, free counsel, to couples that are struggling right now?
I think you got to give each other space. You know, Fabian and I are fortunate enough, you know, to live in an apartment that is more than one room. So, you know, he's a hairstylist, and so he's not working. I'm working. We don't even talk about it. He just goes into another room. I go into another room, and then at 5 o'clock, I'm like, "Hey, honey, I'm home from work." Really, it's really important to give each other that space, even if it's like this morning. I was like, I'm going to walk the dogs alone. I need some air. It's really, you know, because you're not going to have as much space as pre-COVID days. So try to find that time where you could have your own space. And if your partner wants their own space, don't get offended by it. I don't get offended.
Well, I was going to ask Fabian that. So, Fabian, when Mark says, I need my own space, I'm going to go walk those dogs by myself today, do you take offense to that, or do you understand it?
Oh, because he doesn't have to walk the dogs.
Anyway, so listen, I was exactly going to say the same thing he said. Like, give each other space, and also communicating. Like, that's a big key. Like, you have to communicate what you're feeling. If you have fear of how they're going to react or how they're gonna take it, and you're not gonna say anything, you keeping all that in, and it's making you bottle up a lot of stuff. So anything that comes up, you just say it, you communicate it, and in a way that you are kind of delivering the way that I need my space, and I'll be going in the other room, and it's fine, it's okay, it's nothing to do with you, it's just we're close for so long with each other that we just need to have that space.
I think one of the themes that I've been hearing from both couples here is that you really need to be direct with each other and honest, that there really isn't any room for ambiguity. You've got to be straight up. Is that right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%.
Leonard,
But
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mark.
But that's even pre-pandemic. I mean, one of the things I relearned, you know, with my relapse was part of my relapse was I wasn't being honest. But one of the things the relapse did, the silver lining of a relapse, made our relationship so much stronger because I was no longer afraid to say, you know what, I feel a little weird here, or I'm not happy with this. And what we've learned as you grow in the relationship, we don't take it. Yeah, listen, we get into our fights, we get into our arguments. There's no doubt about it. That's every relationship. If anybody tells you differently, then they're on cloud 9 somewhere. But we know that we have to communicate. The times that we don't communicate is when we run into trouble.
And I would like to say also something is once it took us, after his relapse, we went to therapy. Therapy was a couple counseling. It was the best thing we could have done for ourselves. And that helps us to get to a new level of communication. That's when he speaks about being able to just say it and be direct. And listen, we're still learning about it, but for most of the time, we always tell each other how we feel. And like try, at least for myself, I try to deliver the nicest way I could deliver it. I'm very spicy, and I could be.
I like that word, spicy. I'm very spicy. Maybe we shouldn't talk about how spicy you are right now, but I think we know what you're suggesting there. Tim and Jennifer, I want to ask you, do you ever need to bring in like a third party, a therapist or somebody to sort of mitigate through or to referee some of the dynamics between the two of you?
No, not for ourselves, because we do communicate. Sure, we get in our arguments and disagreements, but we also have a safe word that if we start getting heated, you know, we say the word and we walk away and shut it down right away. But I also try to, because I'll be honest, you know, Jennifer, I put on 10 pounds in this. I let her know constantly how beautiful she is, how much I love her, we laugh constantly. You know, we made Passionate Love the other morning, and I'm not a morning sex guy, and it was amazing. But you have to change things, and you have to do different things. I mean, we're together 24/7. I mean, I just tell it the way it is. Sometimes I tell too much. It was amazing.
It's all right. We're gonna get a bigger audience because of this.
So, that's why I talk to a therapist. And it's not all about my wife. It's just about me, my profession, my career, keeping me grounded, my kids, what they're doing. And
I wouldn't be opposed though to a therapist if I ever needed it with each other, like having a third person. But
absolutely.
I know how to go to my corner of, you know, and do my thing. Thank God for my tools and our tools.
She sends me out to the sitting chair in the yard. My thinking chair.
I mean, I think the things that we probably could have or would have thought about before, all that, excuse my language, all that shit's so fucking irrelevant right now. Like, I mean, I don't care. Like, I got all these dresses, right, for all these events and stuff like that. Like, I'm wearing socks right now. Like, I put on a dress that I bought like months ago, but I'm not like all about like the outside. I just got my toes done for the first time since February. Yes, that's crazy. Like, you would think that but I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, like all that other stuff that we used to fight about, and like he's like, babe, I love you for you, like all that. What
I always tell her is, you know, this industry we work in, it's crazy. You deal with a lot of death, heartache. There's great successes, but I said, look, honey, if I want to move to Montana and open a pizza shop, are you cool? She said, tell me when and where, and we're gone. So again,
I go back to I just want to be happy, and I want us to be happy. And you know, with what's really going on outside, like I'm not, you know, when all said and done and my day is over and it's time for me to like go out of this world, I'm not taking like my shoes with me, you know. I hope I take like, you know, did I make a difference? Did I help somebody?
Yeah.
We've got about 9 minutes left, and I have a specific question for each of you that's different. I don't want to quite go there yet because we have a little bit more time. But I want to circle back to Leonard for just a minute. And Leonard, I know this isn't directly related to the topic tonight, but I want to come back to something you talked about, the spilled coffee. Others have talked about the hug and so on. Leonard, do you think, I mean, given the pandemic, we know that we've had to pivot. That seems to become everybody's favorite watchword now, pivot. We'll see where that is in a year. But Leonard, do you think that when we return to the times when we can interact in the rooms of recovery, do you think it's going to be acceptable for newcomers not to actually physically come into the rooms, but to sort of connect via this platform? Or what would be your counsel to the newcomer when we do return to a normal, quote unquote, state?
If they meet with some kind of success with that method, that's fine. You know, if all roads lead to sobriety, take whatever road that works. It just goes against 85 years of history, I think. And I'm saying Zoom is a great alternative because it's all we have now. And I understand how a lot of people like it because they don't have to get dressed or drive or park. But I do understand that most psychologists say 65 to 75% of communication is nonverbal. So I don't feel like I'm always getting the whole picture. And I'm just hearing a voice and looking at a face and not seeing the rest of what's going on. And I also know that when I'm sharing, which I rarely do at a Zoom meeting, I know people are on their phones, which is like, oh, down here. Yep. And they're doing other things because I do it. I do it. And I think part of sharing at a meeting is very, you know, I think Freud had it right, you know, when he talked about, I think it's a very Freudian, I think Freudian therapy works best in AA where people talk without being interrupted, where everybody is focused on them. Because if half the room was looking away, you know, you would feel that, and they wouldn't look away because out of respect and out of interest, they would look at you. So it's a little discombobulated to me, especially when my home group that had 30 people every day now has 110 people zooming in from all over, which I guess is okay. It's obviously okay because it's all we have. But ultimately, I don't know how many meetings Bill and Bob would go to online if they came back.
Mhm.
You know, I think they were real, and I love the hugging, and I don't get the hugging or the coffee afterwards. You know, they say the real meeting is before the meeting and after the meeting.
Mhm.
And now, when the meeting's over, suddenly, everyone's gone. It's like poof, everyone's gone. It's like, anyway.
Well,
Did that answer the question at all?
yeah, that'll be good. Listen,
Stop using.
there'll be plenty of fodder down the road to come back and explore these times in the future and look back, and we'll have a perspective that will probably be different than what we believe today. And so
I know Abra is a fan of Zoom meetings and seems to benefit a lot from them.
yeah, Abra, why are you such a fan? If you don't mind me putting you on the spot for a moment, I know you weren't expecting a question.
That was Leonard who put me on the spot.
Yes, thank you.
Do you like being on the spot?
Oh, sure.
So Abra, what's the best
don't-
part about Zoom meetings for you?
I don't love Zoom meetings. I'm just really grateful that they're around. And I've seen people come into a meeting 6 months ago, 7 months ago, and get 6, 7 months. I know I'm sponsoring someone in another state. My sponsee is sponsoring someone in another state. Recovery goes on, and it has to be fluid, and it has to be changed. It had to change with this, and thank God it did. One of the first things that, once I knew about Zoom, one of the first things I did was to take my home group meeting onto Zoom. And it's not the same, but a lot of the people go to that meeting. I crave in-person meetings as well. I crave the energy in a room. And I get bored with Zoom. I mean, one of the best things about it sometimes is that I can shop on Amazon while it's going on in the background.
Right.
So, it's hard for me to stay.
He melts on himself.
Right? Yeah.
Well,
But I'm glad they're around.
yeah, and they have made it possible for us to all be together tonight and to bring a powerful message of hope and healing to people.
William, might I suggest to keep all of our viewers on till the end? Will Tim and Jennifer reveal their safe word at the end?
You better be careful what you ask.
I don't know about that. I don't know.
Yeah.
That might be. We might want to leave everybody hanging in suspense and do this another time, maybe.
We'll be talking about bringing a third party in, and
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but my mind is.
That's where my mind went. I'm like,
Yeah.
Goes in one direction.
Let's be careful now.
What the hell?
Let's be careful now. I know I want to be respectful of time and the fact that we're coming up at the top of the hour. We've only got a couple of minutes, and I've got a specific question for each of you. I'm going to start with Mark, then I'm going to go to Fabian, then I'm going to go to Tim, and Jen, I'm going to close with you. But this is a question that's not directly related to the couple dynamic, but I just think it would be a shame not to pose this question given the incredible amount of talent that we have here tonight. Really interesting perspectives, and a lot of us don't ever get to rub elbows or do Zoom meetings with such talented people who've got all kinds of interesting perspectives on these things. So I got a question for each of you. It's separate. I'm going to start with you, Mark. And then we'll wrap it up here. Mark, what I want to know from you in your role as a journalist is, how do you think this pandemic is going to play in Hollywood in the years to come?
I think what we're going to see, I think anyone who says they think they know what's going to happen, they don't, because we don't know what's going to happen next week with this pandemic. But I do think, talking to a lot of artists and content creators, I think we're going to see a lot more content once this is over. You have writers who are being just forced to be home. They have to write, and they're just writing and they're writing and they're writing, and artists are painting, and filmmakers are writing scripts and working on scripts. So I think there's going to be this crazy burst of creativity that's happening during the pandemic. And then once the pandemic is over, everyone's just going to want to be together and create and, really sort of, move things. I think there's going to be a radical shift in the distribution of content, but we don't have to get into that. So I think, the silver lining of this is I think we're going to see creativity. We're going to see art come out of it. Someone described it to me the other day as it's going to be like the Roaring '20s. you know,
Awesome.
you know,
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for sharing that. We'll see. I think after the Roaring '20s, there was a big depression, so we better be careful what we ask for there.
And then the 30s.
Yeah, Fabian, I want to come to you because I know you've done a lot of work down in the trenches of HIV/AIDS advocacy, and I've got to ask you: do you worry that COVID will distract or steal the limelight from the work and the support that you and other activists have generated for HIV/AIDS?
I don't think it will steal the light. We weren't expecting this. We weren't expecting to COVID appear, right? Or maybe we did. But it's another thing that we have to worry about. And yes, it's gonna take some light out of it. But I think a lot of people that are coming out and being an activist or being forward about their HIV and then working on that area, I think it's gonna keep this alive. Like the AIDS life cycle being one of those things that people do to keep this alive. I think it's gonna come back, and it's gonna come back stronger, I believe. So I think it's just gonna be a balance that is gonna have to happen for it, because we need to have for both, you know what I mean? Not just one.
Thank you, Fabian. Tim, along those same lines, you've done a lot of strong advocacy work in the field of addiction and treatment and recovery. You've been a loud and powerful, effective voice during the midst of this opioid epidemic and sharing your own experiences. I've got to ask you essentially the same question I asked Fabian. Are you worried that COVID is going to steal the thunder or drown out the advocacy work of you and others in the field of addiction?
William, I think what's happening is we are getting set back because overdoses are through the roof. You know, I was at the 2016 State of the Union address, and Obama talked about opiates and the opiate pandemic for about 2 minutes. And I'm seeing funding taken away from state-funded treatment centers, from mental health providers. So yes, this is setting us back, and harm reductions out there. And when people don't have purpose and connection, and you can't go to a rally, you can't go to a meeting, you can't go do these other things. Yes, we're going to take a step back. And unfortunately, all the advocates and people that are in the trenches, it's going to set us back some, because at the beginning of this, we had people that didn't think they could go to treatment, and treatment centers are over it. Betty Ford Hazelton's opening, and it's one of the most premier centers in the United States. So there is help out there, but some people just don't know how to maneuver the system.
Well, thanks for keeping your voice loud and clear on those issues. And we look forward to maybe we'll have another conversation where we can talk about some of that advocacy work, and we'll certainly include you too. Jen, I want to end with you, and I want to end more on a personal note. You too have been a loud and effective advocate. You've used your own experiences to inspire people to find help. And whenever we do these kinds of events, inevitably we have people who are tuning in for one simple reason: they're desperate. They're desperate and they don't know where to turn. So Jen, we want to close by asking you, what do you say to the newcomer, or the person who wants to become a newcomer but is too fearful? If they're tuning in tonight, what do you say to those people who are still suffering?
Cool. I say, treat yourself with kid gloves. You know, I was taught when I was newly sober, I'm a great self-sabotager inside. You know, I can beat myself up so bad. And you know, when I had like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, you know, they'd say, you know, how would you hold a 6-month-old right now? And I'd be like, I'd cradle it, and they'd be like, and I'd hold its neck because, you know, it's flimsy, and like I'd give it cute faces, and I'd, you know, feed it, clean it, you know, do all this. I'd put it to sleep, it'd cry, I'd, you know, do all this stuff. They're like, great, that's how you treat yourself, you know, and you gotta give us the opportunity to let us love you until you can learn to love yourself. And just believe that we believe, because that's what the old timers tell me till this day. Just believe that we believe.
Wow, thank you. It's time to wrap it up for this evening. This has been a spirited and engaging conversation. And again, I want to thank Jen and Tim and Fabian and Mark for bringing your up close and intimately personal perspectives, your real life practical experience and strength and hope, bringing all of that to our audience this evening. Thank you all. Thanks to our sponsors, the Real Recovery Festival virtual edition coming, streaming to you coming in November. I also want to thank our sponsor, Hazel and Betty Ford, for supporting this great effort. Abra, as always, you pulled it off and we did it without a snafu. You're really remarkable. You should ask your boss for a raise. And finally, Leonard, you're an amazing guy, man. You know, since I first met you out there at Skirball many years ago, I didn't even know who you were. And here we are all these years later. And Leonard, you just keep bringing us incredibly good content and on a new platform here. And I just want to thank you, Leonard Bichelle, for all you've done for our field and all you've done for those who suffer with this illness and need and deserve what we have experienced here this evening. Thanks to all of everyone who tuned in. There were many hundreds of people. This will be recorded and will be available on some platforms coming up here. Abra will make that available. And we hope that you'll tune in again. Another one of these is going to be planned sometime within a couple of weeks or so. But again, thanks for being there, and thanks for carrying the message of hope and help and healing. In the meantime, everybody stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll see you again.